I think it's an interesting point that you talk about translators having to be much more versatile in terms of how they approach their work and indeed critically reflect on that work. And I think one of the things that it has become clearer and clearer as we move on is the constraints that translators are placed under in terms of subtitling constraints, for example, or other types of textual constraints that they face. In a way then, I think the approach that you had originally in 1992, a sort of description-based approach rather than a prescription-based approach, is indeed extendable to these kinds of texts, where, for example, a strategy for literary translation in terms of explicitation may be quite different than that in subtitling, for example.
Indeed,
so that kind of covers, if you like, the different kinds of texts that translators face. Are there any other changes to the book itself that you would like to talk about?
Yes, so some of the changes, obviously the types of changes I was talking about are reflected in the range of new genre that are included in both to exemplify strategies, to exemplify theoretical notions like collocation, plays on idioms, and also to include in the exercises at the end of each chapter. So you have things like material from YouTube, videos, for instance, screenshots. We have web pages in the new edition for as exercises to be worked on. We have material from newspaper outlets that are translated regularly into a lot of languages, like The Economist, like Cosmopolitan, and so on. Other changes that are reflected in the new edition include the embedding of the text, all the texts, in the body of the book itself. So in 1992, because of problems with technology, because we weren't as advanced technologically as we are now, I had to put a lot of the texts at the end of the book, which wasn't very user-friendly, because as people worked with texts or wanted to look at examples, they had to go back to the end of the book to look at Chinese examples or Japanese examples or Arabic examples. Today, because of advances in technology, I've been able to embed these in the body of the text, all of them, so there are no appendices. But Routledge have also done a number of things that have improved the user-friendliness of the book. And so, for example, many of the examples of particular strategies that are used are put in boxes so that they are separated from the rest of the text and are much easier to find and work with. The exercises are put in kind of gray area at the end, again visually much easier to work with and much more user-friendly. But other things that I have included here that weren't in the first edition are things like exercises or exemplification with things like comics, for example. Again, bringing in the visual and the verbal material together. And in some places, not many, but in some places I have tried to also incorporate material on interpreting, because interpreting today is far more important than it was 10 years ago. And the general thinking now is that interpreting and translation are really part of the same discipline. There are fewer attempts to keep them separate today than there were 10 years ago. And so I've tried to incorporate also some material on interpreting where that was relevant and feasible.